1, 2, 3, 4.
JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure.
Yes, he is.
He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I love tipping people, and I feel like I've gotten good at tipping, and I love to tip for things that normally people don't necessarily tip for. So when I'm down in Vegas, I'm really good at like palming a $5 bill, maybe a 20 if I'm getting upgraded seats at somewhere. But then I also like to tip like my mail carrier, or it used to be we had these two amazing guys who were the garbage men who came to our house, and they were funny and they remembered my name, and I interacted with them, and they took tons of garbage that they probably shouldn't have just like taken like that. Because we're the family who somebody in their pajamas runs out, wait. We could just never really get our poop in a group. But I loved tipping those guys, and tipping those guys was putting a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of scotch or something like that out around the holidays. And I always thought that was super cool and classy. And more people, we should tip more people for superior service. When someone goes above and beyond figuring out a tip, maybe it'd be a good idea if I went and got just, like $500 in Target gift cards and $25 increments. So when someone does a good job, you can just hand them a little card, and there's a Target gift card in there. And they can appreciate that. Then they can use that.
If there's a Target where they live.
Well, I assume if they're doing some kind of service in my home.
That's true.
I mean, if I'm going somewhere else, I will bring straight up cash. But I'm talking about the HVAC person who comes and repairs my air conditioning so I don't become a sweaty mess.
Is that how you tip your butcher? Because I know you tip your butcher.
Yeah. No, it's not. I tip my butcher I can't really get into that, but it's unique. It's unique. And you should, because that's somebody that you really want on your side. You want them saving the special cuts for you. Something that's got excellent marbling in it, or, they know how I like the fat cap on it. What's a job you've had where you've accepted a tip where you didn't normally?
Bagging groceries.
You get tipped for that?
You're not supposed to, but I got tipped once, I think. I think I got $1 for it.
Like for carrying them out to the car?
No, I think if I remember correctly, I just bagged it. That was it. And they tipped me.
And you did like a good job?
I guess so. I bagged their groceries correctly. I didn't put breakables next to non-breakables, and I didn't, I probably double wrapped the beef so that it didn't leak out on other stuff. And I probably asked if their gallon of milk, if they wanted a bag for it or not, because some people like to just hold on to the handle. I don't know what I did, but I remember I got a tip once for that.
There's a big deal where people ask about, would you like your milk in a bag? And I always assume no. I always assume it's got a handle built onto it. You know what I really like is, talking about Target again, Target gives you a length of Target branded plastic. It's like a plastic, probably about the width of masking tape. And at the ends are two super sticky sides. And so when you've got a big thing like a bunch of toilet paper, like a 48-pack of toilet paper, they stick these little stickies on it and make an instant handle on the side of it so you can walk it out. When I go to Target and I have to buy toilet paper, or Costco, I don't buy a 4-pack of toilet paper. I buy an enormous pack of toilet paper.
Are you brand specific?
No, I don't care about the brand, but the person I live with deeply cares about the brand. And she doesn't like watching the cartoons of the bears with toilet paper on their butts. So she insists that we get the Angel Soft.
They lost that business because of those bears.
Because of the bears.
Rubbing their butts.
And why do we have to denote the mother bear because she wears pearls? If I saw a bear wearing a pearl necklace, I'd be like, that bitch ate a very fancy lady.
It's time for a dad bear to wear a pearl necklace on
or a tie. What about a tie?
Yeah.
Just some. Why do they? Or
Maybe
like,
it could be a gay couple that has a kid. They're both male bears.
Gay bears.
Gay bears.
They need toilet paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, they do.
I digress. What I'm saying is I buy a big thing of toilet paper because it never goes bad and you know you're going to use it. Yeah. Right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I don't buy a big bunch of bananas.
No.
Because I think, well, what if I get sick of bananas?
Can't wipe your ass with a banana.
You can't. I've tried.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's...
Monkeys don't even do it. They're like, I'll just use my hand.
Yeah, I'd rather use my hand than a banana peel. So, but it embarrasses Jill because her train of thought is, oh, people are going to assume that I'm always taking big shits.
Because you're buying a lot of
Because
toilet
I'm buying
paper.
a lot of toilet paper.
Clearly, I need at least a roll per poop.
Clearly, this person's pooping a lot. And I don't think anything could be further from the truth about that. I think a frugal, smart shopper is buying a lot. And if you've got the storage space for it in your home. Now, when I lived in a studio apartment, I was only buying like an 8-pack.
Yeah.
Because you just don't have the room for it.
No.
And I don't want my shelf space to have books
Plus,
on
you're
it.
probably
I don't want it to
budgeting,
have.
and you're like, yeah, I don't want to spend more on toilet paper at this moment.
Right.
Than that.
I was also going to school in Chicago, and so I thought, well, I'll just save it until I get to school.
Yeah.
Where the school, that's part of my tuition, is they'll provide me with a place, a piece of machinery, and the cleanup material.
Have you ever been out of, you knew you were out of toilet paper at your apartment and you were at like an office or something where there was a roll sitting right there? You ever just taken toilet paper?
Mm-mm.
I have.
Really?
Well, I was broke and I needed to wipe my ass later.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, guess I'm going to use this stuff.
You're coming with me.
And it's usually sandpaper at that point. It's not a quality ply.
Right. Why are we not investing in that in our corporate structures? When I go to a place that serves a lot of people, it's not quality toilet paper.
Anal irritation is something that can really hurt productivity.
Big time.
Absolutely.
And you would think a place like a KFC would invest in really good toilet paper because everyone knows that those two things go hand in hand.
Well, I think they're not assuming that you're going to defecate the food you eat there.
Oh, obviously,
like you're going to eat it
they
there.
don't understand what an all-you-can-eat buffet means.
The defecation probably happens later. How long does it take for food to move through your body?
I have a little bit of irritable bowel syndrome. So
I'm just saying in general, though, like for a human. Like, is it like half a day?
I believe it depends on what the food is.
Okay. Okay.
Some stuff
I'm not a gastroenterologist, so I don't know.
I'll eat a bunch of watermelon and have to, go to the potty very soon after I eat it. This is not where I intended this opening
We
to
started
go.
at Target?
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're buying a new toilet, invest in a quality toilet.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had the opportunity to buy a new toilet?
No, but I do have my perfect setup, which is a squatty potty and wet wipes. You ever use wet wipes?
So I don't because I know they're really, really bad for the sewer system.
You can buy ones that are made for it, though.
Yeah, but even those ones that say that they're good for it still are not good.
Yeah,
for
but the
it.
sewer system is not my problem. I'm
Right.
not going to have to
You're
fix that.
taxes.
I'm not going to have to fix that sewer system. Like if you,
By the way, you're a homeowner now. I would avoid using them from now on.
not a homeowner. I'm living in my mom's house while she's out on the East Coast. But I would say don't only use wet wipes. Start with a wet wipe. Or end with a wet wipe, maybe.
Right. I would think
End with a wet wipe to make sure you got everything. But you feel fresh. You feel nice.
I would also like to make bidets a common thing.
I tried a bidet for the first time this year.
They're amazing. Did it have the heated water in it?
It was amazing. I didn't know I wanted it until I tried it, and now I need to get a bidet at some point.
There's a restaurant in uptown Minneapolis called Amazing Thailand, which truly is some of the best Thai food I've ever had. But they've got astronaut toilets in their bathroom.
You mean they're shaped like astronauts?
No.
I don't understand what that means.
Oh, jeez, this toilet's shaped like Buzz Aldrin.
Is Neil Armstrong peeing in right now?
One small duke for man. No, I call them astronaut toilets because they've got an LED like screen next to them, and you've got all these options. And so there's a bidet feature, and there's like a scent feature and stuff. Well, there's also a button called Turbo, and I've eaten there 50, 60 times. And I bring other people there, and none of us are brave enough to push the turbo button. And mainly because I'm worried that my genitals are going to be sucked into the toilet. Why would they add that feature? I don't know. it doesn't make sense, but that's what I worry about. And it's in another language.
Oh, sure.
The little instructions. And have you ever noticed how like from country to country, the picture of warning signs change?
Yeah.
So, the picture of electrocution is different in Portugal than it would be in Italy, than it is in Mexico, than it is in the United States.
I'm going to take your word for it, but I believe you.
It is, because I get electrocuted a lot.
In a lot of different countries.
Because I don't understand the signage. So to me, I would really love to push the turbo button, but I'm just not brave enough.
I'll do it. I would do it in a heartbeat.
So let's go. We'll go to Uptown Minneapolis and go eat at amazing Thailand.
I love Thai food. I love defecating in astronaut toilets.
Best public restroom in Fargo.
We've talked about this before on the podcast.
On the podcast?
Yeah,
about the Fargo theaters?
Fargo theaters, and then I mentioned Theater B has awesome bathrooms now. They're gender neutral, and they have the really nice lock, like a deadbolt. So you are in there and you have privacy. I always hate those doors that it's just a little switch on the knob and you don't know if it's actually working or not. And there's no stalls.
I am also a big fan of the stall doors that go from the ground all the way to the ceiling. Holiday Inn in Fargo recently redid their bathrooms, and that's what they have.
Sugar House Casino in Philadelphia is my favorite casino bathrooms, because that's
the Sugar House Casino.
Sugar House Casino in Philadelphia. Yeah.
Was it named after J.W. Sugar House?
I have no idea. Probably he was a known Philadelphian.
I'm gonna. Do you ever see the movie Walk Hard?
Yeah.
I love Walk Hard. And there's a part where John C. Reilly is supposed to be 15 years old and he's got a wife and a baby. And he goes, I think I'm doing pretty good for a guy, a 15-year-old with a wife and a baby. And he goes, I'm just trying to live my dream. And Kristen Wiig plays his wife. She goes, what about my dream, Dewey? He goes, Edith, I can't build you a house made out of candy. It'll melt. Not if it never rains. I love that. And this is good. Tucker was laughing, and laughter goes along with our guest today.
I was wondering what the segue will be.
Fred Bevill is a comedian who I've respected for a very, very long time, and Tucker's had the great privilege of working with for a long time.
Yep.
And he was cool enough to come in here, and the time flies by. If you are a student of comedy, if it's even something that you enjoy watching, this is an insider view. You get to learn about everything from what a comedy condo is to Jerry Seinfeld and his ability to use simple household appliances. We cover a lot of stuff in here.
A lot of cruise ship talk.
A lot of cruise ship, because he works on a cruise ship. So let's not waste any more time. Tucker and I need to go use a restroom and compare notes. This is JJ Meets World with Fred Bevill.
JJ Meets World.
Let's see. According to my notes, Fred Bevill.
Bevel, like a beveled edge.
Oh, be evil. Okay.
Okay.
Fred Bevill, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
We're pretty stoked to get you here. You're a pretty big celebrity for us to get, because
That's a low bar.
For us.
there are vacationers from here to Kingdom Come who have said, I saw him on a cruise ship. Or maybe you saw him at a USO stop. Or maybe you remember him from Courtney's Comedy Club. Man, what's it like to be a working comic? That's gotta be awesome.
It is when you're working. It is. It is. You're like, I'm working. That's happy. No, I love it. I went back to my roots, and stand-up comedy's always been there for me, and things have been going along great. I've had on the comeback. I came out just doing like spot work in 2014, and then 2015 was pretty regular, and then 16 and 17 blew up, and here we are in 18. I'm as busy as I want to be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's wiping his mouth with $100 bills. So
yeah, right.
It's really working out well.
He's rolling in that cruise ship money.
Yeah, exactly.
So how'd you get your start in stand-up comedy?
Gosh, I think like anybody else, really, my story's not unique at all. I was in LA, going to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and was at the Comedy Store open mic night, and my friends said, hey, you should go up and do some time. So I put my name on the list. You go to the Comedy Store at like 2 p.m. and wait for the list to come out. You sign your name on it, and then you wait another couple of hours to see the order of the list, and if you even made the final list at all. And if you were on it, you got 3 minutes in the potluck, in the O Room on potluck night at the Comedy Store. And, you know, the first 3 minutes, it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but man, when you're up there and you're filling 3 minutes at time, it goes slower than you think.
So did you ever think that was going to be a part of your life?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally knew I wanted to be a comedian or a live entertainer. And that was the goal. That's what I did for a long time until I came to Fargo, and then took a sabbatical from that. Still always did stand up, but never, it wasn't my living for a while. And then now it's back to the main bread and butter source.
So do you subscribe to that all comedians have to be kind of damaged?
No, I don't.
Good.
I don't at all.
You probably, I mean,
That doesn't mean Fred isn't damaged.
No, I'm,
Right, you know.
I'm as fucked up as anybody. But I don't think that's a prerequisite to being a funny person or a comedian at all. No.
People ask me like, well, are you working through something? And I go, no. I said, this is a room full of blue collar dudes. I knew they were going to laugh, you know, when I made reference to this. So
Sure.
that's all I'm doing. I'm
Sure.
not trying to work through some bullying that happened when I was a young man or
Well, you know, I think in like our psychological roots, I think we are people pleasers. We are people that like to maybe be the center of attention. Not always, but have our moments, and then be the one that's that makes the room crack up. I mean, there is a certain kind of need that we have, but I think most of the live entertainers I know, whether they're a comic or a juggler or a hypnotist or a magician or whatever they do, they're normal, well-adjusted members of society. But for some reason, I don't. Maybe it started with Lenny Bruce back in the day when, you know, everyone thinks that stand-ups especially are damaged psychological mutants that can't function in regular society, and that's just not true. I mean there is that element, but I think you'd find that in any profession.
To me, I think a lot of times people take for granted that, let's say you're at the grocery store and there's an end cap display and it's full of fake owls that people put on their porch to scare away bats or whatever the hell it is. You're going to approach it in two ways, right? Way number one, which I think is the common way of like, this would be a great way to get rid of my bat problem. And then way number two is the person who's like, well, this is fucked up. Why at the grocery store? Why next to the chips? And to find a reason why that seems to be an oddity, and to kind of explore those oddities a little bit, which is great especially if you're a comedian who that's your bend, man, where it's like, this is the weird thing that's happening, versus the person who just lays it out clean and flat.
Yeah, you know, and I think for me, I would want to buy that owl and put it up and maybe get a story out of that.
Yeah.
Out of the installation or the first night with it, or, you know, looking at the owls in the grocery store and making an observational quip, you know, and pulling a Seinfeld, like, who are these people that buy these things? You know, there's that angle, and then there's, you know, the personal angle of actually getting it and seeing what happens, and then there's the, you know, let's buy it and blow it up in front of somebody and see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get a joke out of that owl.
Yeah,
You just
right?
gotta-
For the record, I've never seen that.
No.
But I feel like somebody is listening from some grocery store chain being like, hey, Margaret, remind me to buy a bunch of owls for the chain and put them next to the chips.
There'll be at least two guys checking it out.
So, okay, so here's let's talk about some stand-up comedy legends I have heard.
Love it.
So I've only ever toured with my improv troupe, and we keep our touring to small towns, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. Occasionally we'll go out to Texas or New York for
But
something.
that improv troupe has been around forever.
Yeah, 17 years.
My goodness.
Can you believe that?
And you've been running it for how long?
The bulk of it.
Yeah.
I think since 2006.
Yeah, okay.
So
See, 17 years, that's about when I got to Fargo. I came to Fargo in 2001. That's
Yeah.
when my wife and I met in 2001. And I remember one of the things I did when I was just settling my feet in Fargo was I worked at Courtney's Comedy Club. I went to the hotel manager and said, I can make this a better room if you give me some autonomy here. So we started seating the people. We started
Nice.
numbering the tables, organizing the cocktail service. I mean, it was a better club, putting a little production value in the show.
Sure.
You know, a little opening music, some twirly lights, nothing big, but made a difference. But I remember back in that day, you and two other young men come in saying, hey, we got this improv troupe we're starting. We need a place to work. And you're a comedy club. And it made sense. So, yeah, I remember you guys getting like a Wednesday night?
yeah.
For free, just come
Yeah.
in and work out. And
We did stuff there, and then that led to we opened for Ellen Cleghorn
Nice.
at Playmakers.
that's a name.
who was so nice. I couldn't believe how nice she was.
Cool.
And then she, of course, got to tell us a bunch of stories about Saturday Night Live. And for an 18, 19-year-old kid, that was the dream.
Oh, man. I
Right?
mean, well, look, Ellen Cleghorn, she was a big deal. She probably
Yeah.
still is out there touring.
yeah.
For sure.
Oh, and it's amazing because you can ride something like Saturday Night Live for the rest of your career.
You totally could.
And
Absolutely.
be
I'm
happy.
writing Saved by the Bell.
Some solid cameo appearances in Saved by
Yeah.
the Bell by
Okay,
Fred.
so let's go into. So, what was Saved by the Bell?
No, Saved by
cameo
the Bell
stuff
is
like?
not worth talking about. I was just
It's
making
not?
a joke.
But
like,
you were on set for a taping of Saved by the
I
Bell,
was.
so there must be
Yeah.
something interesting there.
I
So
was.
you did
I mean-
sit next to Zach Morris, right, in the movie theater.
I did.
So Saved by the Bell seems every like 4 years there seems to be like a new resurgence. Like there's a new game, like a board game of Saved by the Bell that just came out. So
See,
it's-
I'm totally unfamiliar with that. That's
oh really? Because
someone
you're
has
all
a
over the
l-
back of
a
it.
lot.
There's also an amazing web series right now called Zach Morris's Trash.
Really?
And the whole premise is it's they basically just do a breakdown of every episode with a narrator saying this is what happens. And the whole point is to show you that Zach Morris is actually an evil guy because he does some terrible things. He gets
Like
his
attempting
friends
to brainwash his friends
he gets
with
his friends
subliminal
to
messages.
do, like, the worst things in the world. And they go, listen, if you digest an episode of Saved by the Bell in this fashion, you will see that Zach Morris is a piece of shit.
And there's the one that first caught my attention is the one where Zach goes on a reluctant date with a girl in a wheelchair.
Sure.
And they talk about how he locks the
Was that
girl.
your episode?
I was going to say, I think
That's
that's,
your-
my
that's your
episode.
Oh, you got to see Zach
where they do like
Morris's
the
trash.
wheelchair basketball
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So Fred is in the movie theater scene.
Okay.
You see him right at the edge of the frame. He's
Yep.
eating popcorn.
And I'm in the basketball scene
You're in
as
the
well.
basketball scene as well,
I'm
in
on
the
the
audience.
bottom bleacher, yeah.
So when you do something like that, something that becomes an iconic television show, do you ever get sick of it? Or is it a fun anecdote to be sitting there waiting for your oil to get changed and be like, let me tell you something about Mario Lopez.
It's never come up, honestly. I've
Really?
never been in an auto repair place going, you want to hear something about Mario Lopez
Hey,
or
Chuck.
Dustin
You're-
Diamond? Or,
You're going to the wrong auto.
I guess so.
Auto places. Mine
guess
plays Saved by the Bell on loop.
what a crazy phenomenon that thing was. That was designed for like preteen girls.
Yeah.
And it ended up in every frat house and dorm
Really?
room across the country. Yeah.
I'm
Crazy.
surprised people don't understand the difference between Good Morning Miss Bliss and Saved by the Bell. It's like it's the same series. They just rebranded it as
Yeah.
the kids got older and
Right.
dealt with some headier issues.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's the same show. You could go back generations of television and go, oh, that was Saved by the Bell of the 50s. Oh, this was
Oh,
Saved by the
yeah.
Bell of the 70s. This was Welcome Back, Kotter. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just been revamped over and over again. It's a pretty not that genius of a premise, kids in high school and the problems that
Played by
teenagers go
adults.
through. Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if there's plans to reboot that series. I think the last one was Saved by the Bell, the New Class. Way to really add a subtitle.
Well, there
that
was the
one.
college years before that. Remember those?
Right, your college years, and then
Yeah.
Screech graduates and becomes the assistant principal at Bayside High.
Was this before or after the sex tape?
This is before.
And the horribly failed attempt at stand-up comedy by Dustin Diamond.
Well before.
I remember when he played the windbreak and he lost the audience in the first like 10 minutes and like, oh, you inbred stupid sons of bitches, and this group of
That's
people,
a way to get the crowd on your side, right?
yeah, and I think it's because the first thing they yelled was like "Screech," and that's what they wanted. They wanted to see Screech.
Well, you can't blame them either.
Nope,
I mean,
not at
that's
all.
what you're famous for. That's why people bought a ticket to see. That is your marquee value, is that you're from that show.
Yep.
No one's there because they want to see your stand-up.
Right.
They're there because they want to see Screech.
But like Dave Coulier does stand up still.
Yeah.
He's come to Fargo Moorhead before. And,
For sure.
But does he have the same? I mean, I know his marquee value is slightly different, but still it's attached to Full House.
Absolutely, it is. No, I think his marquee value is probably mostly Full House,
Yeah.
and then there's people that know him
As Alanis Morissette's ex-boyfriend.
and as someone who does stand up.
Full House, Alanis Morissette's ex-boyfriend, stand-up comedian.
But I think Seinfeld said it best. Being a celebrity gets you 5 free minutes. You get 5 free minutes when you first walk out because everyone's just like, oh my gosh, there he is. Whoever that person is, there he is. He's 5 feet from us. After about 5 minutes, it's like, all right, well, we paid $50 to see this show. It better be a good show. And that's when you gotta start delivering. Now, Coulier was a comic before Full House and has been a comic all the way through. He's kind of like Brad Garrett and Ray Romano. They've always been comics. I don't know that Dustin Diamond had always been a comic. I can't speak on it honestly. After seeing his act, I'm going to guess not. I'm guessing he hired a few writers in LA. They wrote some bits and he put his spin on things and took it on the road. And I'm sure he made a pretty good piece of coin.
Yeah.
From going to small town America as Screech and selling out theaters.
I feel like his routine is, I hate Saved by the Bell because I've seen him twice now.
Yeah.
And neither time do people leave going like, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
Both times they're like, oh, well, I mean, kind of really want to watch that Saved by the Bell wheelchair episode. They're waiting. They want his opening act to be the robot he built on Saved by the Bell.
Does he have an opening act?
He does not.
No, I was going to say
he came out just
comics.
straight up.
Guys like that usually wouldn't have an opening act because their opening act would smoke them.
Yeah, that's true.
You're dealing with like a experienced comic as your opening act.
That makes sense.
I also am surprised because he never was in what I would consider a traditional place for me to watch comedy. He's being booked by places that are booking bands and DJs on the regular, and they're like, oh, well, we want to do a comedy night to try and drive in a new crowd.
Sure.
And so you get places like the Windbreak, which is a truck stop bar.
Absolutely.
That's
The Windbreak would be like your standard one nighter a comic does,
right?
When they're cutting their teeth.
I saw Freddie do a show once in a place that was not made for
Are
stand-up.
you talking about Colorado?
Yeah.
Oh, that did not go well.
That was amazing.
It did not go
Do
well.
tell.
Go for it. Go for it.
It was Tucker and I used to work together on a poker tour, and that's how we became friends and all that. And we had this stop in Colorado, and the casino manager and his girlfriend became friends of the people of the tour. And for years they said, you should do comedy at our bar. You should do comedy at our bar, blah, blah, blah. So we finally said, okay, let's do comedy at our bar, a bar that she managed. And it was your typical looking sports bar. At least they had like a staging area. I mean, not really, but it was something. There was no like marketing for it at all.
Except for the black and white piece of paper they taped to the front door 20 minutes before the show started.
Exactly right. So I think I remember the line Tucker had that night because it didn't go well. And it was like, well, yeah, people were just hanging out and suddenly a comedy show broke out in front of them. There was no one there like, hey, there's going to be a comedy show at 8:00. Let's sit here for the comedy show that's going to be at 8:00.
Yeah, and you were like, what, 2-3 feet away from that front table of people that wasn't there for a comedy show?
Yeah, and they could have given a shit that I was on talking in front of them. They were there to drink a pitcher of beer, and I think it was like an office party or something. They were celebrating something. So yeah, that didn't go well. But nothing, alcohol couldn't cure. And
There you go, right?
exactly.
Do you ever get to so how long of a set do you do? Like, what's your
Depends
set
on where
length?
I'm at. If usually a set will be 45 minutes to an hour. Generally an hour if I'm doing a corporate show or a USO thing or something like that.
Do you ever approach when you step on stage and be like, okay, here we go. I have 59 more minutes, 58 more minutes, 57 more minutes.
No, I don't think of it that way. I'm just looking to have a good time when I go up on stage. You know, I'm nervous if I'm not nervous, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like then that's usually when I'm
Taking it for granted at
a
that
little,
point.
yeah, exactly.
You're not
Maybe
paying
getting a little
attention.
too cocky, not paying attention to the details, and that's usually around the time I'll have a humbling set. But most of the time, like I'll this mantra I'll say in my head, like trust in your abilities, trust in your talent, trust in your experience, and above all, go have fun and just be relaxed. That's the key.
There's a
Is to
woman
just be
named
relaxed.
Susan Messing who is like the godmother of improv in Chicago. And she's got a great quote that says, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. And so that's our like a mantra we use in line benders. Like, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. Because I said, even what's the worst case that happens? You go up and you do a show and you end up doing it for yourself. Entertain yourself while you're doing it. And you know what? Someone from that audience is going to find it entertaining.
Yeah.
And
It's pretty much how this podcast works.
It really is, yeah. And I listen to it.
Talking about you, Troy.
Well, for a comedy show to even be a comedy show, you have to be funny at some point.
Yeah.
Like the only difference
that would be a big part of it.
The only difference between that, being funny at some point and not is the difference between a comedy show and a lecture. I mean, no one ever walks out of a movie and goes, God, was that even a movie? I mean, because it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
People will walk out of a comedy show and go, was that supposed to be comedy? Was that a comedy show? It's like you have to. It's the only job where if you suck so much at it, no one will know what you were trying to do.
I saw a guy bomb once. It was my favorite bomb I've ever seen.
It can be fun to watch people bomb.
It was when the side street used to be at its old location, and they'd have open mic nights for music, like every Tuesday or something like that. And the bar would be full. Like, it'd be full of people, and people would go up with acoustic guitars, and they'd play music. Well, one guy decided, well, this is my chance to do some comedy.
Yeah.
To my first comedy show. So a packed bar that's not looking at the stage, but listening, right? Because the music is supposed to provide the atmosphere. So he goes up and he says his first joke, and it's something that ends with something really crude, right? Like something just really, really that you would have to be a really established comedian to get people to laugh when you say it.
Sure.
He says it and waits for a laugh. And no one is paying attention except for me. I'm at the bar watching because I'm like, this is going to be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So he says the same joke again because he thinks no one heard him say it. And then no one laughs and no one pays attention. And he goes, hey guys, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm trying to do some comedy up here. And he starts bargaining with the audience. And he goes, you know what? I mean, if you guys aren't going to listen, I'm just going to stand here. I've got 2 more minutes. I'm just going to stand here if you're not going to listen.
Oh, that's a disaster.
Oh, it was awesome. It was so good. I thought, what are you doing, dude? No one's here for this.
Yeah.
Why are you coming here waiting for someone to do that? Like, it'd be like going to a farmer's market and trying to sell vape juice.
Right.
You know? Like, this is not the crowd that's here to buy that.
Exactly.
These guys smoke tobacco out the pipe, son.
Right. Old school.
You've been doing a lot of work on cruise ships, huh?
Yeah.
It's a good gig. I
It's a
almost
great
ended
gig.
up doing cruise ships through Second City. They call it
Yeah,
going out on
Second
the
City
boat.
was on Norwegian that I
Yeah.
worked with. They're not there anymore, though.
I know.
They gave Second City the heave-ho.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. See, that's the difference between a stand-up comedian and like the improv people. I need a team of people that come with me. You are a single ticket.
Well, they're two different skill sets, completely different
without a
skill
doubt.
sets. But a lot of people think, well, you're a comic, you can be an improv guy. Or you're an improv guy, you could be a comic. Obviously, they're relatable in a lot of ways, but they're two completely different skill sets.
Well, I tried
honestly.
stand-up and it did not go well.
I think an improv guy could transition into stand-up easier than a stand-up could transition into being part of an improv troupe. Because being part of an improv troupe is all about being selfless and kind of I don't know why I'm doing this on the podcast. I'm pantomiming volleyball, you set and spike, Well, in improv, you always want to be the guy setting, and let the other guy spike. And every now and then you get your turn to spike. Well, in stand-up, you're always the spiker and the setter. So it's harder, I think, for a stand-up to share that, the funny line.
Sure.
Or the funny moment with someone else. And an improv artist will have that same sense of timing that a stand-up needs. So I think that helps the improv guy translate into stand-up easier as well. But it's
and then you've got sketch comedy people and just fuck
and
them.
that's a whole
those
other.
Those are the real assholes of the comedy world.
That's a whole nother skill set. And in my opinion, a lot of it they're related in the sense that I think good sketches come from good improv. You're basically just taking the golden lines and putting them into context and a format, and then good riffing skills for a comic can also come from improv. So improv is in a lot of ways like the base line for everything that we put under the comedy umbrella, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their own thoughts on this.
I like that because there's some people who just say like, well, it's the low hanging fruit of the comedy world.
It can
It's
be. No, but it can be. That's not, I mean, I think it's more productive rather than to get offended by that, to kind of take it in and go, there's kind of a point there. But there's low hanging fruit in comedy too, in stand up and in sketch. I mean, it's not what you're doing, it's what you're talking about.
I think the difference though is how you market your performances. Because anytime someone's trying to market their like college improv troops thing, and it's like, you're a little too excited. You're a little too excited.
I love when like a mainstream movie or television show makes fun of improv. I think other improvisers like that too, because it's funny. There's stuff that we take so seriously. Garfunkel and Oates had a short-lived television series, which I really enjoyed. And on one of them, they play themselves and they get hired to work at this college. And so they show up and they said, okay, so who's opening for us? Well, actually, you're opening for us. We're the Piggling Ganthers because their team name was the Panthers, and we're an improv troupe. We're pretty popular on campus, and they're like,
We're kind of a big deal.
But
here.
we'd like you guys to be involved in one of the improvs, and they reluctantly agree because they don't want to do it. And one of them, like right off the bat, shoots the other one with like a handgun. It's
hysterical.
I mean, I love stuff like that. Even in, I think it was 22 Jump Street, they go to see a shitty college improv troupe, and the first thing Channing Tatum says is like, "Can we get an object?" He goes, "Tampon."
Yeah. Yep.
Dildo. No. Yeah. I get a real kick out of that.
I've seen Second City troops on Norwegian's cruise line ships, and just to be honest, I wasn't impressed. I think a good improv team is kind of like having a good sports team. You need a couple of your stars, and then you need a good supporting cast around them.
Need a fat guy.
Sure.
Need one fat guy.
Second City's got
You need a hot chick.
Yep, a hot chick, and then you need you need two people who are not white. For a long time, it didn't matter to them what they were, just not white. And then a fat guy. When I had my callback to the Second City touring company, the first one is an open audition. Everyone auditions. When you get called back with what type you're being put into and what role you're going to fill. And it was a room of 40 other guys who looked just like me.
Kind of like the deer, the dick, and the dork.
Yep.
Kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the troops I've seen on the ships weren't very strong troops. Honestly, I was a little curious as to why Second City chose those people to be together on a cruise ship. I'll give you a good example. I was, they'll do 3 sets a night every night of the cruise because there's 5,000 people on these ships, and they want everybody to have a chance. So I go to the 7:30 show. Now, usually, at the later in the evening, the less the less the shackles they're on the wrist. They let you play around as you go later in the evening.
Less kiddos.
But there's still a governor on. Like, you can never drop F-bombs or say the C word or get too graphic. I mean, there's still a governor on you. And they kind of put they're trusting you as a professional to know where that line is. So I'm at the 7:30 Second City show, and it's a packed room, and they start taking suggestions, and it's they're taking things like pussy clamp and queef, and just these suggestions that shouldn't be done at a 7:30 show. And rather than be like, come on guys, let's keep it family friendly, or look at the time, we can't do that one at this show, they just took it and then would do a bit. And I literally saw them walk like 30 people within the first 10 minutes of their show, and that's no bueno on a cruise ship.
Nope.
That's just any show really. But
Have you ever had like a big walkout show that
no,
you were on
thank
stage for?
God, no.
Because your act is really clean,
My act is really clean. I especially now. I mean, I've been doing,
which is amazing because I know you, and that's not you. The very first thing this guy ever said to me, it's seared in my head, was, "What's up, fuckface?" That's the first thing this guy ever said to me.
I knew we were going to be friends, so I figured we just.
And then he got like a weird like flesh-eating bacteria after
That's
that.
true,
and
yeah.
on a cruise ship, wasn't it? You were on a boat?
I think I got that at Majestic.
But I thought you said you were on a cruise ship and you had like tripped down some stairs or something and you'd injured your foot.
Yeah.
And then the foot got a bacterial infection and your foot looked like Pizza the Hut.
It did.
From Spaceballs
It was
for
bad.
a month.
Yeah, I had to
Gross.
take some serious antibiotics, and it was
See, that's Fred.
gross.
And you couldn't have
But then
any
you see my
flip-flops.
stand up, and you're like, oh, it's family fun, clean kind of
Well,
thing.
because corporate dollars cash just as nice as any other.
Again,
and-
I go back to Seinfeld. He said it best. He goes, the cleaner you are, the more you can work. You can you can roll the dice and hope that you're the next Kevin Hart, where you're selling out arenas talking about your dick, or you can go a little more mainstream and be clean and just work regularly.
Is it wrong of me to say I don't get Kevin Hart?
Not at all.
I don't get him.
I don't
understand
know
what's
why
funny.
any comic would want to perform in a 50,000 seat arena.
Sure.
There's no way, in my opinion. All of this is my opinion, where you could have an intimate comedy show in, the Madison Square Garden, for crying out loud. At $100 a ticket, you're sitting in the rafters and you're watching. Kevin Hart's already a little guy. He's like 5'7" or something.
I'm 5'7". I've stood next to him. He's
smaller
solid
than you?
5'4". Oh yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
So you have him on the big jumbotron, and that's the view you get for $100. You could have just sat at home and waited for the HBO special and had front row seats. And yeah, I don't really get it either. I think,
His style. I mean, I could see Dave Chappelle killing that.
oh my gosh, I love
He's
Dave
got to be the
Chappelle.
best working
I love
stand-up
Dave
right now.
Chappelle. In my
who
opinion-
hasn't been shut down for past deeds.
Are you talking about Louis C.K.?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean,
having said that, though, I cannot wait for Louis C.K.'s next hour. When he takes his recent trials
Yep.
onto the stage in his stand-up, oh my God, it's going to be hysterically funny. It's going to be, and I don't mean to excuse what Louis C.K. did. I mean, I think on the spectrum of abusing women, he's pretty low. Considering, I mean, you have Harvey Weinstein on the monster side of the
Yep.
scale,
Yeah.
and then you have Louis C.K. who asked girls if he could jack off in front of them. That's basically what he did.
there was a Jim Gaffigan interview recently, and I think he framed it in a way that makes the most sense to me because, yeah, like I also will look at what Louis did and equivocate it with what someone else did, but I know that I have to look at what Louis did on his own, right? Because
Sure.
on his own, that was just bad.
Sure.
But Jim Gaffigan brought up the point that we as a culture are after some time passes, we stop thinking about it. And his example was Mike Tyson raped a person,
Right.
punched his wife in the face, and just did a Broadway show,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, regardless of what you've done in the public eye, if you're in America, there's a really solid chance that you could have a career once some time has passed because
Absolutely.
we only seem to care for whatever reason for so long. And I don't know why that is. It's just an interesting thing to point out and look at.
And as you say that, Michael Richards is looking at his clock going, is it time yet?
Yeah.
Do I get my comeback shot
Without
yet?
a doubt, yeah.
And he will. And
There needs to be some kind of, I mean, for a public to do it though, right? They have to kind of look at you and see that you've done like a mea culpa, and they want
I
you
think
to.
so.
They want you to kind of do something publicly.
yeah.
what
I
did
think
Mike
you're
Tyson
right.
do other than be in the Hangover movie?
That's a really good point. That might have been it.
I
I think he just rebranded himself that way, basically.
I think Tuck's right. I think he just kind of rebranded himself and let himself be the fool in that movie. You know, he kind of shed that tough guy, I'm going to beat your ass thing, and let himself be the punchline for a little bit, and that humanized him. Look, Mel Gibson was just in Daddy's Home too.
Yeah.
You know, and he had just wild rants against women and against Jewish people and against.
Well, he beat up his girlfriend.
And he beat up his girlfriend. And here, you know, what was that, a decade ago?
And yet he still opens a movie with $100 million.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He directed that movie, and that got him back into the fold and back into the Oscars, and now he's in Daddy's Home 2. I think. I mean, I guess you can make an argument that everybody deserves a little forgiveness, or maybe that second shot, or I guess depending on what they did. I don't think Harvey Weinstein's going to get that chance, or should he?
That dude's a monster. I
He's
mean,
a total monster.
At some point, your behavior means you need to be locked away from society.
Of course,
absolutely.
But then you have a Louis C.K. who. I mean, basically, Louis C.K. asked if he could masturbate in front of women. And these women said, sure, because not that they necessarily wanted him to, but because he's Louis C.K.
Yeah, they were in a position where they felt they had to.
Absolutely. And that's an absolute abuse of power on Louis' part. And I honestly, and I don't know the man at all, I don't know that he realized that until the accusations were made.
My sense is that he realized it years earlier, but never wanted to come out with it.
Sure.
And then has been, I think he's a different person now. My read of it, not that I know him either. He's probably a different person now, I hope, than he was back then. But my guess is, I mean, he was working things like this into his stand-up.
Yeah, and he's always
art.
had a little bit of that dark.
So he's always been tiptoeing around it. And I think he's just been waiting for when the hammer came down. And the rumors about him were out there for a long time on the internet. And I didn't believe them because I had no reason to. I didn't know anyone who knew him. But once the Harvey Weinstein story broke, I was like, well, we're going to finally find out the truth about whether Louis did that or not.
Right.
And then we found out.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, when those floodgates opened, everybody went down, right? And likely, and deservedly so. But I think in the overall, Louis' crime will allow him to make a comeback. I think people will forgive him eventually if they haven't already. And I think Tucker had a good point too. It depends on what his Maya culpa moment is.
Yeah.
And he did come out with what I thought was a really heartfelt, sincere apology.
Yeah, at least he owned up to it.
Yeah.
You know, everyone else came up with some kind of,
it was consensual.
I don't know what they were talking
about.
I don't know this person,
I really dug what Sarah Silverman came out with and talked
Love
about
Sarah
afterward.
Silverman.
Yeah. And she's someone who said, okay, I'm a woman, I'm a comedian, I'm Louis' good friend, and I still love him, but I need to figure out how I am going to process this as a person who is not going to stop loving him, but what does that look like in the future? And I think that's kind of what fans feel, right? They say,
and I think
I've been to a bunch of his shows and I feel betrayed. Well, are you really betrayed? Does it mean that he's not as funny? Can you not go back and listen to his albums?
No, that person can shut the fuck up. I mean, you're a total stranger that spent $50 on a ticket. You have
no
betrayed.
ownership
you have
over this
no
man.
personal connection to him whatsoever.
I will say I can't listen to Bill Cosby anymore.
Oh, that's such a tragedy.
But because Bill Cosby was the first stand-up I ever knew about.
Yeah.
I played Bill Cosby as himself all the time as a kid. But because of what he did, which was rape hundreds of women over decades, right? That is so evil. I just can't listen to it now.
And what makes it even more evil?
It comes from an evil person, the person who's making these jokes.
What makes it even more evil is that he was Bill Cosby. Like, of people, like, look, if I got busted roofing 50 some odd women, people would be like, yeah, I get it. Look at him. He had to roofie him. Bill Cosby was rich and
biggest star
famous
in the world.
And from like the 70s to present day.
He probably wouldn't have had to try it to
exactly
get
my point.
laid.
He needed a roofie like I needed a cheeseburger.
I think it's
true.
I kind of need a cheeseburger though. I'm just gonna say that.
But my point is if you didn't need to roofie people and you still did, then you absolutely need to go to jail. Now, let me be clear, roofing anybody whether you needed to or not, quote unquote, is a completely monstrous thing to do. But especially when you're in the Bill Cosby position where all you need to do is say hi and woo him a little bit and you'll probably get the same end result.
Yeah.
Instead, he chose to completely knock him out and then take advantage of him.
It shows a deeper, darker.
It's just evil.
Need for power that just nope.
And it's the biggest tragedy, honestly. I mean, he was my hero. He was my comedy. Him and Red Skelton and Bob Newhart and the guys of that ilk were my heroes. I remember listening to Cosby albums as a young kid.
Yeah.
And that was my first like taste of stand-up comedy. And then of course, who didn't watch the Cosby Show in the 80s and coming up and everybody loved Bill Cosby. And then you find out
whole
he's just
routines
this
from the movie Ghost Dad.
Of course.
One of the lessons that I've taken away from everything that's come after Harvey Weinstein was outed as a monster is that it just shows you that no matter how much you like celebrity XYZ, you don't know that person.
Absolutely.
You know nothing about them.
Sure.
All you see is the thing that they're presenting to you in this movie or in this football game or in this stand-up show. That's the only version of them that you get. And the version that's public facing, that's not a real person. Right? That's a fake thing that you're seeing. So someone is a big fan of, say, Anthony Hopkins, and that's because they're going off of the references of him in all these different movies, and he seems so nice. But if you meet him, I bet he's like, fuck you.
Maybe.
He just says that. I bet he just says it all the time, just to anyone who walks up to him.
I've always thought, wouldn't it be fun to hang out with Jeffrey Tambor? Right?
Oh, yeah.
I like him in movies. He's funny. He's worked with Mel Brooks. He's on one of my favorite television shows. And then you find out that he's a guy who can't control his temper and is an asshole to women and is an asshole to other people on the set. The people who are making this available to him, the opportunity available to him. And the more you learn about him, the more you go, ugh. I read an interview with who's the guy who played Bilbo Baggins in the
New Hobbit?
Yeah.
Who was Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman. So Martin Freeman does this interview with Entertainment Weekly right before the first season of Fargo comes out. And in it, the interviewer talks about how he freaks out on some PA who brought him something. And he's like, this is not gluten-free. Are you kidding me? How many weeks have we been on this set? Well, I tell you what, you're not going to be on the set much longer.
This was Martin Freeman?
Martin Freeman.
Really?
And the more I dug into it, I'm like, apparently he's kind of a dick. Well,
Really?
apparently he's kind of a dick. He is a dick.
Oh.
And that it hurts because in my mind, I put him on a pedestal and isn't he great? And he's in so many things that I love about him. And then you go, he is just like everybody else. Right? So you can be nice to other people, you can be passive aggressive, you can be aggressive. There are all these different styles of communication, and just because I think that he is always Tim from The Office doesn't really mean that he is always Tim from The Office.
Right. That is reminding me, though, of a really awesome prank that I think Funny or Die did. I think it was Funny or Die and not College Humor. This footage leaked from a set that Dennis Quaid was shooting, where he goes off while he's on set and he's yelling, and it's like one of the production people's got the cell phone in the corner and they're recording it, and he's yelling and this is ridiculous, I can't see what this guy's doing over here, and this is garbage, right? And he walks out, and that was online for like 3-4 days.
Wow.
We're all like, damn, Dennis Quaid is a dick.
Wow.
Well, then Funny or Die releases the skit that was from. And it's about an actor who loses his mind on set because the set is super unprofessional and nothing is going right. And someone records him freaking out, and it's totally out of context.
Oh no!
So the whole point was that they were showing us that this freak out wasn't real.
Yeah.
And that from this point of view, it looked like it was real. So like when he goes, "This is garbage," he's pointing at a bag of garbage, just going, "This is garbage."
That's hysterical.
I lost it. I fucking love that. So good.
That's just, it's amazing what people will complain about, though. Like, I see it on cruise ships all the time. At least, like, the people we're talking about now are actual celebrities, like real deal celebrities. Yeah. These, I experienced what I call cruise ship fame, which means like you're known for that 4 to 5 days out of a 7-day cruise. Once you go up and do your main show, your anonymity's gone, and it's going to take you 10 minutes longer to get from your room to the buffet than it did 2 days earlier, because people know you now. Then the ship pulls into port, and all those people go home. You're done. Now you're just a normal person again. And so every week you have to prove yourself, and you're literally only as good as your last show. Having said that, I'll work with these Broadway stars. I did the air quotes, Broadway stars. People who were on Broadway at one point, but now it's 20 years later. They still have the voice, but just not the Broadway thing anymore. So they'll do, their songs or whatever. And there's something about these people where they're just always so difficult to be around and work with. And it's only the Broadway people.
Really?
And one of the techs, and these guys are professional tech people. One of the techs says, I go, why is it always the Broadway people? He goes, well, it's never the ones that are on Broadway.
Oh.
It's the ones that were on Broadway. I thought that was the most brilliant statement ever.
I was talking.
I was on Broadway.
Was I was talking to
20 years ago, and that's nothing. I mean, hey, that's a credit that deserves some accolades, no doubt. But
But doesn't mean you should be a dick.
it does
for
not
it.
mean
you didn't cure cancer.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you can snap at a total stranger because there's not honey backstage for you, or I mean, just the dumbest things where you just are like, wow, you need to get over yourself.
I was talking to a country band recently, and they were telling me that Big and Rich gave them some advice. They opened for Big and Rich at some county fair somewhere.
That'd be awesome.
And Big and Rich, huge stardom with Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy.
Yeah.
But they've kind of come down, and now they're playing county fairs and stuff again. But what Big and Rich told him was this. He said, listen, on your way up, you're going to meet the same people as on your way down. And the better you can be on your way up, the better they're going to treat you on the way down.
That makes a lot of sense.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, not necessarily like on your way down, like your career's about to end, but, this is a temp gig.
Yeah.
Anybody that's putting themselves out for public opinion and whatever, it's a temp gig. Fame is a temp gig.
Well, you have a small fraction to become a household name. You've got an even smaller fraction to remain a household name.
Yeah.
And so they were telling me, they're like, yeah, every single, when they work with a grip, or if they, if they're meeting a fair manager or something like that, they go up and they say hello, and they pose for a ton of pictures with fans, because those are the people who are out there cheering you on, and you want them to come to the same show 15, 20 years from now when you're, a little grayer around the edges, and you want to do that. I met Jim Gaffigan years ago when he was in Fargo, and he
Jim
told
plays
me
Fargo a lot.
And in fact,
This must be like one of his testing
Well,
grounds.
it's a bunch of people that look like him.
That's true.
And he
That's
was
true. He's so funny though.
he's
amazing.
funny.
Yeah.
He's
And
amazing.
He was 100%
Did he do that new bit
approachable.
about like how much trust we put into like maid staff to clean our room?
No, the last time I saw
It's
him,
so funny.
he was doing the bit about water beds, where
Yes, I know.
my
that bit.
wife was saying that she wanted us to get a water bed, and I said, yeah, but honey, we're not pedophiles.
He was having lunch by himself in downtown Fargo, just having a sandwich. And I walked up to him and I'm like, I don't mean to interrupt your lunch. I'm very sorry, but I just want to let you know I'm coming to the show tonight. I think you're awesome and you're great. And I'm really sorry that you have to like come to Fargo to do a show.
Did he invite you to sit down?
He did.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I sat down and he gave me this is the comedy advice that I share with people all the time, which is when I said, I'm sorry that you had to come to Fargo, he said, listen, anybody can sell out a theater in Chicago or New York. But when you can sell out a town like Fargo, North Dakota, that means that you are making it. That means that enough people recognize what you do. You have enough people who are selling other people on your talent. And I thought, oh my God, that's a mind-blowing concept for me. Because, of course, if you're in Chicago, you've got 10 million people who can come to your show.
Yeah.
But if you're in Fargo, I just saw Weird Al and Emo
You
Phillips.
need a bigger slice of the overall population to come to your show than if you were in a big city.
Yeah,
Sure.
selling 2,500 tickets in Fargo is like selling out Madison Square Garden in New York.
Well, everyone knows him as the Hot Pockets guy, you know, or also, and he's been on Conan O'Brien thousands of times for Pale Force. You know,
But he's never really had a sitcom.
He's never had a
or
sitcom,
his own
but he's been in a
vehicle.
million movies, right?
Right.
He's kind of like Stephen Tobolowsky, and like you've seen him before in a million things.
So he had a thing called the Jim Gaffigan Show, which was on FX, and it was very much like Louis, where he played himself.
Really? I didn't even hear about that show.
Which is really too bad because it is. I wish they would have picked it up for longer because it's funny. The very first episode involves his wife giving him this giant Bible he needed to pass off to some people who are coming to see his show that night, friends of hers who were seeing his show. And he gets talked to outside. It was outside of like Caroline's, and he's signing an autograph and someone takes a picture. And the next day he gets contacted by the Christian Right saying, "We saw that you had this Bible. We want to recommend your show to all of our all the people in our network because it's really refreshing to see a comedian who, you know, loves Jesus." And so then all of a sudden he becomes super famous in the Christian world, and he starts like having to change his show a little bit so that he can, you know, adhere to them, and they love him. And finally he's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend to be this type of a comedian for you guys. It's the show start to finish is really, really funny, but I think it only had like 7 episodes.
Wow, that's a bummer. It sounds like it was pretty funny.
It was good, but I always expected him to get a sitcom. Where's his Home Improvement?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, he doesn't. I mean, yeah, he's missing that hook, right? Like, you know, Tim Allen Home Improvement had the more power thing. Mm-hmm. Roseanne Barr was the domestic goddess.
You know, at the same time, though, I mean, I think he's better than sitcoms.
I think you're right.
He's far better than a sitcom because in a sitcom, it seems like unless you are Jerry Seinfeld and you make something that is intrinsically you, that feels like you. Most of these sitcoms where a comedian goes to start it, it's just like, it almost is like they're retiring now. Like, oh, now I got the sitcom money and I'm not writing any of this stuff anymore. And some of it's loosely based on my stand-up.
Right.
And to varying degrees of success. So Ray Romano did great, but other things probably just didn't take off.
No, yeah. I mean, you look at Foxworthy. He had like a very short-lived sitcom.
Yeah. Titus, how long was Titus's show for?
Very short-lived, maybe a season, maybe 2. And Christopher Titus, talk about, he was one of those guys that was touted to be the next big thing, and it just never really worked out. At least on that level. I know Chris is still touring and doing stand-up, but. You know, look, if you get into this business because you want to be a sitcom star or you know, rich and famous, you're going to have a pretty miserable life. And I think, you know, to harken back to the first topic we were talking about, like are comedians all fucked up people? No, but the ones who get into the business to be rich and famous, those are the fucked up people because they're chasing a carrot that they're never going to get. Even if they get famous, they're never going to fulfill that insatiable appetite for fame and attention. You just have to get into this because there's nothing else on the planet Earth that makes you as happy as making an audience laugh. And if you get a check when you're done with your show, that's a bonus. That means you can actually do this for a living. And if that's your goal, it can be attainable and you can have a happy life. If your goal is rich and famous, I would absolutely find something else that you can do.
But also, if you want to start a life as a stand-up comedian, you have to relocate somewhere, right?
In Fargo, yeah.
And then you're also on the road after that a lot.
Totally. You know, when I started, I was living in the Napa Valley, California, and I had a dozen places to go work out within an hour of me. You know, whether it be, you know, that 60-mile radius includes San Francisco, Vallejo, Oakland, the whole Bay Area, and Sonoma, and it did Sacramento. There was plenty of places to go work out, and that's what's, even for me as a professional, I have a lot of material on the shelf that I'm having a hard time working out because I can't premiere new material on a cruise ship. The stakes are way too high there. They don't want to see you practice.
Yeah.
They want to see your show. So, there is a new club opening up in town in West Fargo, Bar 9. that I'm excited about. I hope they can make it work, and I'd love to. You'll see me there quite a bit, either in a hosting role or just popping in to do 5 minutes to try out new material.
So, okay, so we talked briefly before we started, but I have a big beef with people who think that they started a comedy scene in Fargo, North Dakota. That, like, it's me. I'm the one who got this thing going. There wasn't an open mic night before me, blah, blah, blah.
They're all big fish in a little pond.
And
that's how they see themselves.
And since I've seen some of these comedy renaissance take place, I've seen it three or four times.
What comedy renaissance?
Exactly, right?
Have I missed a memo? Where is there?
Just you can gauge by the amount of like gig posters that you see up in coffee shops.
Oh, see, I'm never downtown. That's the thing. I'm never downtown.
Well, and I hate to say this, but it's Fargo, North Dakota, right? It's Fargo, West Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota, Minnesota. You holding this standard of what you think the world of stand-up comedy needs to be, and these rules that apply don't count in Fargo as much. So there are people who say, well, you got to do your time. You got to be going to open mics every night for at least a year before you're considered for a showcase. Be like, okay, so
who said that?
Oh, that is
one of the 5 stand-up comedians in town.
Yeah. So and
there's 5?
Yeah,
I think so.
And
am I on that list?
See, that's the thing. No, because they don't take people who've come before them and hold them up to merit. They don't take the people who went into Courtney's and said, "Let me improve on this," so that 10 years from now, some kids can get an opportunity to come in. And they use the word comedy, and they treat it like it's something that you've got to suck their dick to be able to do. So if you're not
they're gatekeeping. They're gatekeeping.
Exactly.
You're not a real comedian in this town until I say you are.
And it drives me up the wall because then you end up
Who is this person? Who is this?
It's a whole series of
people.
Who
is this comedic oligarch?
There are chances that they listen. We don't know.
And they hate me already. So this is nothing new to them. And it's like this. I've lived in Chicago, and I know people who've toured the country and who are working comedians. And when this person from Fargo who does 3 open mics a week is telling me how to like run my business or how to do something professionally, I'm like, hey, listen, dickhead, my business makes more in a single show than you did last year. So you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about though is actually, it's not just like the comedy culture in Fargo, if you want to attach the word culture to it, but any artistic community in a smaller area like this area can become very insular. And it's because the stakes are so low,
right?
Which is a weird way to think of it, but this is
I totally get it.
This is that theater company's chance to, and we got to be the best in Fargo, and it's like no one cares.
Yeah,
this should be the best art gallery. Yeah, in Fargo, North Dakota.
Theater B, we've often masturbated in public about how great we think we are, and we've gotten better at not doing that anymore because we're realizing. We're just, we're performers here in town that like to do this, and that's why we're doing it.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to be the big fish in your pond either. I think,
Well, you should just, if you are the big fish, just enjoy being it. But I don't like trying to be that thing.
No, I agree with that.
Because those people can fuck themselves.
Right.
With a dick. Or not. Anything else.
But Theater B has been around for... I don't think I remember a time in Fargo where I didn't know about Theater B.
15 years.
Yeah, I've been here 17 years, so that makes sense. Yep. And same with Linebenders. I've known of Linebenders for my existence in Fargo. And there's nothing wrong with being that fish. These people that think they started the comedy scene or that they're carrying the torch, like without them the light of comedy would go out in Fargo and never return again is... I can see why. I mean, I would get frustrated with that too. But on the same sense, you kind of want to just let it be because you still want that comedy. You want those people hustling in the comedy scene to keep a comedy scene. Now, they should know, honestly, that Courtney's was around for like 25 years before, it shut down. And anyone who's in the know will tell you that Courtney's didn't shut down because Courtney's was doing bad. Courtney's had to shut down because it was inside of a hotel that was doing bad.
It's the Herbergers of the comedy scene.
It's the
Tonight's comedy is 60% off on select items.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, or would that be a metaphor? That would be a metaphor.
No idea.
It's a metaphor because it's not using like or as.
There you go.
Right. So,
I hope no English teachers listen to this show.
oh, they would already turned off.
Yeah, they know where it's at.
Get to
Preposition.
Beowulf.
I think that these guys that want to keep the torch lit for comedy in Fargo, you just gotta bite your tongue a little bit and let them have their big cheese moments. But we'll see what happens with Bar 9. It's funny. Like I had one of these people, I won't call out names, instant message me through Facebook asking for advice on how to start a comedy club. And not that I'm an expert on how to start a comedy club, but I was like, well, go to a bar that you start scouting out bars that have some kind of staging, find out what their off night is, and try to pitch a comedy show on that off night. No one's going to give you a Saturday 8:00 when they're already full. You want to find a Sunday or a Wednesday or something like that. And the person said, well, I don't want to tell all the secrets because then they'll just go do it. And I said, well, first of all, there's not a lot of secrets. A comedy club is basically a bar with a microphone in it. That's all it is. That's really all it is. There's some extra tables and chairs, but it's a bar with a microphone in it. That's really all it is. And there's no secret to that. And if you get a club open, in 2 weeks, anybody that's paying attention will have all of the quote unquote secrets and be able to copy it either way. And then I say, let's have 12 places that do stand up in town. Why not? I don't have a stake in any of them financially, but I just love to have a place to go and work out new material.
What do you think about comedy competitions?
Are you talking about like the festivals?
No, I'm talking about the funniest person with a day job or the North Dakota stand-up comedy competition. And
comedy. I guess overall I don't mind them. I think they're very subjective. I mean, because you won a comedy competition doesn't mean you're the funniest one among the people you competed with. It's just you struck the judge's chord, and that's why you won. It looks good on a resume. It'll help you get into some clubs. Yeah, I guess overall, I'm don't have any beef against them.
You ever get asked to judge any of that stuff?
No. The last comedy competition I did was years ago, and it was for the Minnesota comedy competition, and they did a satellite in Fargo that I won. It was at the OB, if you remember how that was back in the day. And then went down to, I can't remember the casino, one of the native casinos right outside of Minneapolis there. And, a Minneapolis guy won, and he deserved to. He was very, very funny. I don't know what kind of mileage he got out of that, but it's just at the end of the day, it's a place for a comic to go work, and it's a place for a promoter to make a buck. And if everybody gets to do that, then we get to keep comedy clubs,
Right.
It's pretty hard for a comedy club to survive nowadays. They're drying up all over the place. I'm honestly worried that comedy might be going down the road of a mime, where it's going to be one of those arts that aren't practiced very much, but historians love it, and it'll be part of a class. We're going to do the stand-up section of our theater training now, only because there's not a lot of places for comedy. There's comedy clubs are closing by the dozens every week, in these quote unquote comedy nights that are around small town America. They struggle. And I think, I don't know what it is with this generation. Maybe it's the iPhones that are just changing everybody, but people just don't go out that much anymore. They just don't want to. I mean, why would you get off your couch to go do something when you can go to YouTube and watch it?
I'm sure a lot of people too also, when they think stand-up comedy, they think of like an HBO special, right, that's been worked on for a long time, and this is a really professional, like really awesome comedian doing it. And so that's what they expect stand-up comedy is.
Right.
And then they're going to go to a club and they might see something that makes them laugh, but they might not. But it's not, more than likely, it's not going to be the caliber that they see
Definitely
in an
not.
hour special. And then they go, oh, well, this isn't what I was looking for.
Definitely not. And you're right. And I think, a lot of people don't realize that. Like if you're going to, Wednesday night, sports bar, comedy night, and then, the weekend hotel lounge gig, you're going to see a different caliber of comic than you'll see at, the Funny Bone in South Bend, Indiana, or, the Carolines in New York.
Yeah.
You're going to see a different caliber of comics there. But the guy that's showcasing at Carolines, New York needs that one-nighter in Fargo and Bemidji and whatever to get to that point where he's at. And that's where the gap is right now. And that's what's worrying me for the young up-and-comers.
Is there somebody out there who's been in the game? Jesus, fuck you, JJ.
It's all in the game, JJ.
Is there somebody out there who's been working for a long time who you think more people should know about, and that you maybe want to give like a little like, oh yeah, like for me, I love Kevin Meaney.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, do I think that man
Wait,
is
you're going
hilarious.
old school with
Yeah.
Kevin Meaney.
And
Do you know Kevin Meaney?
No, I don't.
We're big pants people. Yeah.
I don't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was introduced to him because I'm a big fan of John Candy, and he was in the Uncle Buck sitcom. He played Uncle Buck on the short-lived, I think, 4-episode Uncle
I think
Buck
you, along
sitcom.
with most people, would know Kevin Meaney if I showed you a picture
Got
of
it.
Kevin
Okay.
Meaney.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
or if you heard him, he's got a very distinct voice that is. But I've always really liked him, and I started listening to his stuff in the late '90s, and I'm like, this guy's friggin' hilarious. Why aren't more people listening to Kevin Meaney? And I try and get my friends to listen to him, and then they go, "Who's this?"
Gosh, is he still out there? Is
He
he still
is, yeah.
touring and working? And
His stuff is more, I think, it's less of a tour and more of this is just what I'm doing right now. So he did a lot of Broadway in Canada. So he was in like Hairspray in Canada for 2 or 3 years, playing multiple roles in the show. And funny as hell. Like he played the Jerry Stiller part in it and crushed it. So funny.
no, he's great. I haven't heard Kevin's name in a long, long time. He's like he's just said, one of those guys in the '90s that was
I'm looking at him right now. I do not recognize this
really.
guy. Yeah.
He was doing all the A&Es Evening at the Improvs, and I think he even had his own special. In fact, I know he did. Yeah, it was the HBO half-hour comedy hour or whatever they called it back then.
And is that the one where he got the really long mic cord and walked outside of, I want to say like he was like at the Comedy Cellar and walked out. And so there's a camera with a super bright light on it taping him, and he like gets into somebody else's cab and he goes, I'm going to give you a private show, and does like 5 minutes for just some dude sitting in a cab.
Yeah.
And so he kind of had this weird quirky sense to him, kind of Andy Kaufman like, in that, you're not going to just sit here and absorb a show. I'm going to do stuff to take you out of your comfort zone of what you think a stand-up show is. But I think he's hilarious.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen him in forever. As far as like, unfortunately, you can't see him anymore now because he's passed on. But one of my all-time favorites is Mitch Hedberg.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and there's a lot of people that don't know Mitch Hedberg, but if they heard his bits, they've
probably heard his bits.
Yeah.
He's someone who's very quotable.
Yeah.
Because his jokes are very short.
Right.
And anyone can deliver
and he
them
has
for the most part.
that cadence. Yeah, you just need to do like
Got to get the Mitch Hedberg sound in there.
the cadence there. But
he was an interesting person to see live because he was so terrified of the audience. I saw 3 of his shows where he never made eye contact with the audience.
Yeah, he had that kind of a Jim Morrison thing where he'd wear the sunglasses and he was so blown out on heroin most of the time. I had the privilege of calling Mitch a friend.
Wow.
And Doug Stanhope is also a friend of mine too. And those two were best buddies back in I'm going back before our time with HPT. I mean, it goes back farther than that, where he was just a mess. I mean, he would have been a huge star, except the industry knew of his habits and they just don't touch that stuff.
Are you even in touch with Doug Stanhope anymore these days?
Doug and I had a text maybe a couple of months ago, just checking in and saying, hey, he's killing it.
Oh, yeah.
He's still touring. He's got his own fan page. And
he's kind of one of those comedians.
Yeah.
Where if you're a stand-up comedian, you're more than likely you're a fan of Doug Stanhope.
Yeah. People who are stand-up fans absolutely know who Doug is. People who are casual that don't pay that much attention to the business of stand-up probably don't know Doug, because Doug's never really been in a mainstream vehicle. I mean, he had the Man Show for a little bit with Kimmel.
Well,
way
he took
back.
over after Kimmel.
Or was it after Kimmel?
It was after. So there were Kimmel and Carolla, and then they both left, and it was Stanhope and someone else.
Yeah. Okay.
Didn't he play like Tim Allen's brother on Home Improvement too?
I don't know.
Wasn't that him?
I don't think
Maybe it was someone else, but
that seems like a little old for Doug. Like when I say like a long time ago, Doug would have been.
But he would have been. He was an adult working already at that point. I mean, he was already doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, and Doug's quality along with Mitch's quality along with Dave Chappelle is they're so unapologetically honest and just truly, like, in the essence of the term, don't give a shit. They're going to say what they're going to say, and you take it however you're going to take it. They could give a shit, and to have like that level of comfort with just being totally honest, so rare. Louis one of those guys. Chappelle, Stanhope definitely was or is. Hedberg was. There's only Bill Hicks is another one that was just unabashed. And is just going to say what he's going to say. Those are the greats, really. I mean, that's a level of honesty I'll never be able to achieve. Honestly, you're stripping yourself
Bare.
way too bare, and I could never do it. So I look at Chappelle and I'm like, holy shit, he just made a joke about Bill Cosby being a rapist and a superhero at the same time, and it's brilliant.
I saw Dave twice, once in Fargo and then once at the First Avenue. And the First Avenue show was one of his first shows after he took his hiatus. And I was chatting with somebody there and I said, so, what do you think the show's going to be like? And they said, listen, this is his third show of 3 nights. The last 2 nights were complete opposite. He doesn't come out and, he doesn't have this bit where he opens. You can't tell where he's at. And then he doesn't have an ending bit. He just walks around and talks. And I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. And they've got all of these ring girls, like from a boxing match, walking around with signs that say, no flash photography. If you yell something out, we're going to kick you out. Because at that point, one of the reasons he got burnt out was people yelling like,
Rick James.
Do Chip. Yeah, do Rick James. And that's what it was when I saw Mitch Hedberg, was people were yelling out which bits they wanted him to do. And I was like, oh, that's tough. But he did a 3.5 hour set of just walking around. Chappelle.
Wow.
And you could tell half the stuff was just kind of coming to him at that moment, because he would stop and sit down and talk to somebody, and whatever they're talking about, just kind of riff on it.
Well,
and
that's how Chappelle writes.
That's amazing.
His thing. I mean, he said it in several interviews. He'll go up with a topic and maybe a couple of bullet point lines that he has in his pocket, but for the most part, he's just riffing, and that's how he writes.
Wow.
God.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
That's nuts.
I would be terrified to go up there.
So that's got to be polar opposite of like Jerry Seinfeld.
Completely polar opposite.
You opened for Seinfeld one time,
I did,
didn't you?
yeah.
What was that like?
It was amazing. It was mind blowing. It was a long time ago now, but yeah, at the time, I still carry the advice he gave me. I dropped a couple of his lines earlier. I can't remember what they were now, but.
You don't carry it with you that much.
No, when they pop up, I remember No, it was amazing. I worked with him in Anchorage, Alaska. We got to share like this penthouse together. You know this story,
yeah.
And,
well, I'm setting it up, so you tell it.
Okay.
What was that like?
It was like the top floor of a business building, and they turned it into like this penthouse thing. And we're going back to like the early 90s, and I got there first, and a few minutes, about a half an hour later, Seinfeld walks through the door, And it turns out we're sharing this penthouse together, and the club owner's there, and he's giving us a quick tour. And it was just amazing just to share a living space with Jerry Seinfeld for a few days and pick his brain. He's an absolutely normal human being. He wasn't as huge then as he is today, but, I watch comedians in cars getting coffee, and he seems exactly the same talking with these comics at the coffee shop as he did with me in Anchorage. There was
an issue with a bread maker?
Right.
That's my favorite part.
So the kitchen was fully stocked, had everything you could imagine in it, and there was a bread maker and all the ingredients to make bread. I should point out that I tell this story in a seminar I do on the ships now too.
Okay.
I'll have to tell you about that. The primetime TV, Anchorage is an hour behind West Coast time, 3 hours behind Fargo time here. So primetime TV starts at 7 p.m. in Alaska. So I am literally on the couch watching an episode of Seinfeld while I hear Jerry Seinfeld from the kitchen yelling, "Fred, the bread's not rising. Why isn't the bread rising?" And he's got this whole, I'm literally, my mind is blown. I'm like, I don't know, man. I am not a baker. I don't know what to tell you. A few minutes later, the bread's not rising. Why isn't the bread rising? Turns out he never had the bread maker plugged in to the wall. So he finally plugs it in. We go do our show. I'm opening for him. Come back, and we had fresh made bread, and it was a wonderful, wonderful loaf of bread. It was kosher.
Yeah, celebrities, they're just like you and I, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah.
You and Seinfeld broke bread together.
Literally, yes.
Mm-hmm. Early riser, or does he sleep in?
No, he's an early riser. And, back to, Tucker saying that, polar opposite, Chappelle writes on stage and kind of riffs. Seinfeld will start his day at 9 a.m. with a blank monitor in front of him. Wow. He'll take a lunch break, and he'll clock out at 4 or 5 o'clock. That's his routine. He treats it like an office job. And one of the things he'll say about it is, he's walking down Fifth Avenue years ago when he was a young comic coming up, and he'd see these construction guys, slaving away, hammering, whatever they're doing. He's like, well, if they can get up and drag their ass to work to do that, why can't I drag my ass to the table and write some jokes? And that's kind of how he treated stand-up. It was very formula. And if you look at his stand-up, it fits his style. I mean, he's an observationalist, kind of in that Jim Gaffigan, talk about the mundane topics. The who are these people? Why do they do this? Tell you what I love about Chinese people. They're sticking with the chopsticks. They've seen the spoon.
You're not out there plowing a field with... So to get a penthouse like that is pretty sweet, because I've heard horror stories about the comedy condos that people get put up in.
They can be rough.
The bunk beds.
Yeah, we should explain what comedy condos are. So they're basically, if you're working a week-long comedy club, or any regular comedy club that's doing 5 nights or more, instead of putting you up in a hotel room at X amount a night, they'll rent an apartment or a house or whatever. And, they're just paying a monthly fee, and then they send a cleaning person in weekly, or sometimes it's an employee of the club, like the waitress or the cook or whoever it is, that'll make a few extra bucks to go in and clean the apartment once a week after the old batch is gone and before the new batch gets in. So the people cleaning it aren't necessarily, licensed, trained people. It's just the cocktail server making an extra $30 to do the laundry and clean the sheets and whatever. So yeah, some of these quote unquote comedy condos, as they're called in the industry, it can be just rank. Just completely rank.
I mean, are you coming in? Are there sheets on the bed, and do you look at it and be like, "Oof, I'm not going to sleep on this thing"?
There are. You know what, man? When you do the road, whether you're in a comedy condo or a Ritz-Carlton or a Super 8, you just have to not think about those things. Like, don't travel with a black light. You're just going to kill yourself. Just trust. Whenever I walk into a hotel room, I'm just, of course they cleaned it. They clean this like it's a hospital room. Why wouldn't they? They don't want their people to get sick or get a skin rash or whatever. But yeah, you take a black light into it, it'd scare the shit out of you, no doubt.
We had a night where we were in western North Dakota, and they put us up at the town's B&B. I mean, you've played small towns, I am sure.
At a bed and breakfast, you were at?
Where there's not maybe a motel in the town. And so either you're driving out of there, but a lot of times they're like, well, we got the room donated, so we just put you up here. So we stay at this B&B, and it's an old couple's home.
That's my nightmare.
That's what it is.
It's my total nightmare.
And so they weren't home when we were there. There was a note saying, go around to the back. The sliding glass door is open. So we go in there. There's 6 of us. And so we're doubling up 2 to a room. I get in this room and I'm like, this room's weird. There's a Bible hanging out here on the bedside table. And I just feel weird. But it's just a bed, a table, and a lamp.
Yeah.
Well, I put all my stuff in there. And then this old couple gets home later. And they said, oh, we're so excited to have you. And did you find all the rooms? Yes, we did. And then 2 minutes later, they said, you've put your things in our bedroom. And so I had hunkered down in their actual bedroom.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes, yeah, you'll be in this room. So they took me down to an unfinished basement where there was a mattress against a wall.
Oh, my gosh.
Middle of winter. But the thing that was most messed up is we go and we do our show, and the whole town turns out for this show because it's the only thing happening in a town population of 280. We go back, and this couple proceeds to treat us like we're their grandkids. And they come and they stoke a fire for us, and she brings up a tray of hot chocolate with marshmallows in it. Our friend Davey had hooked up an Xbox so he could play one of the Lego Star Wars games. A couple of us are playing a fucking Monopoly game in there. And in the morning, we woke up and they had breakfast. And we get up to have breakfast. And they said, okay, well, now we're going to say grace. And 3 people are like, I'm out of here. And I was like, this is our sign that we're out. And we were on tour for like a week. So straight road gig after road gig after road gig for us for a week in different towns. And that one I'll always remember that one as being the most fucked up place. And we've stayed in community centers where they put out some cots.
Wait, it was fucked up because they wanted to say prayers before breakfast?
No, it's fucked up because I felt like I was at my grandparents' house.
I was like, this sounds kind of awesome. I mean, I get the whole praying and not wanting to if you don't believe, but like they made you hot chocolate. Right? And stoked a fire.
Yeah. But I sort
Their heart was in the right spot.
You played Monopoly.
It just felt weird. It felt weird being. You said it's your nightmare, right? Being in somebody else's home.
I never liked staying at a bed and breakfast. I've only had to do that a couple of times, but yeah, you do have like this very like you're a guest in a stranger's home, kind of feel. I actually have that beat. I was stuck. You're gonna love this.
On Care?
I was on Care.
This is on Care. Oh,
no, I'll tell that story.
Yes,
though.
please do.
I will.
Please do.
That's a
I love
classic.
On Care. I love On Care.
This just happened like maybe last year, a couple of years ago. I was getting off a luxury liner cruise ship called Regent, like 6-star, like true 1% crowd. And I got off the ship in Longyearbyen, Norway, because it was the cruise was actually one of those world voyage things. I was only on it for a week. So I get off in Longyearbyen, Norway, which if you look on a globe is the most northern city on the planet Earth. Like if you go any more north, you're a geologist or a scientist. You're going for a reason. You're not just going for a walk in the backyard, right? I ended up getting stuck there for 3 days because the fog was too thick for planes to take off and land. So I'm stuck in Longyearbyen, Norway with 2 Mexican pan flute players from Sweden. True story. I don't speak a lick of Norwegian. They don't speak a lick of English because this is not a tourist town. This is just like a place a luxury cruise ship will stop to be like, here's the most remote fucking place on the planet you can say you've been to. So I don't speak Norwegian. They don't speak English. Luckily, the Mexican pan flute players speak Swedish, which is not too far off from Norwegian.
Okay.
So we were able to get by. But the food menus are all in Norwegian. Again, this is not a tourist town. They make no contingencies for people that aren't from there.
9 or 10 consonants in a row. I don't know what the fuck
A lot
this
of
is.
J's and K's in the words, And so I just point out a menu. I'm like, I'll take that. And finally, I meet someone that speaks a little bit of English. I'm like, what am I eating? And he's like, you're eating seal. And I've also eaten whale and torsk, and because they don't have cows there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
They don't have their cows is deer, like a lot of venison, a lot of wolves, a lot of coyotes, but mostly sea life. So I've eaten whale, sea lion, just these different. There was a little basket of stuffed animals, of sea life stuffed animal. I took a picture and sent it to my wife with a caption, I know what each of these taste like. You just had to forget everything I knew about food. Everything I knew about food. The next day, it was 3 days. I was stuck there. And the living accommodations were as bare as you could get. I had a bed and a light and a TV, which might as well have not existed because there's no TV shows.
No.
There's no...
And it's all in Norwegian anyway.
And it's all in Norwegian anyway. There was one channel that showed movies.
Right? That's what Norwegian is, right?
It's like
Exactly.
Swedish Chef from the Muppets.
Exactly. So yeah, I just for 3 days I was very introspective and could not wait to get on a
Wow.
plane out of
How's
Longyearbyen.
how's the weed up there in Longyearbyen?
No weed. That was the worst. Like if you die in Longyearbyen, like if you live there and you die, you can't be buried there. The permafrost is so you can't dig. Cats are outlawed there.
Cats?
Cats.
This is
because-
not the place for me.
No, you would hate it.
my
You
God.
can't own a cat in Longyearbyen, Norway.
Why?
because-
Why?
I don't know. I guess because I don't know why. Maybe
Weird.
because they can't dig, but I don't know why a cat would dig.
Well, I mean, I don't know why that would be like, well, we only allow animals that dig around here. So
Even nothing can dig. Nothing can be dug.
Sure.
Because of the permafrost on the ground. And it was summertime too, so you could literally see the sun like rotate around my head above me.
shit.
It was light. It would be 2 a.m. and it looks like high noon.
God.
It was a wacky week, man.
Sounds like the beginning of a forgotten Janine Garofalo romantic comedy from the mid-90s.
Right? She's still out there doing her thing.
Yeah, she is. Did you ever read that book that she and Ben Stiller wrote together? It was really, really funny. It was really, really good.
The last book I read, which I recommend to both you, and especially you, I know you'd love it. It was written by, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but it's called A Carlin Home Companion. And it was written by George Carlin's daughter from the perspective of a child being raised by a stand-up
Oh,
comic.
wow.
And it's really, really amazing.
That sounds awesome.
It's a page turner, man. You'll rip through that book in a weekend.
Did you ever read Born Standing Up?
Yeah, Steve Martin's book.
Book
Tucker and
is
I have a Steve
amazing.
Martin story.
We do.
Do
we,
ya?
we met Steve Martin
Yeah.
doing the poker show. And this was actually when we were doing the Underpants at
his
Theater
play,
B.
yeah.
His play that he adapted a German play, and it's called The Underpants. And then we ended up, I don't know where we were.
We were at the
It's the Starkey Hearing Foundation.
Yeah, Starkey Hearing Foundation, but we were at the Golden Nugget downtown Vegas.
Okay. And we find out one day that, hey, Phil Hellmuth, this popular poker player, is organizing a private game with Steve Martin, who was going to be one of the celebrities there for this foundation that we were filming
A
for.
private game in the poker room.
In the poker room.
So a private game in public.
So
Yeah.
we get permission to walk in there with cameras and film it. And you were playing at the table.
I got to sit down at the table, yeah. It was $1,000 buy-in, and I don't have $1,000, but I mean, when can you sit at a poker table with Steve Martin?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. It's pretty
I sat down and folded every hand. I
Yeah.
rarely played a hand.
well, and he was trying to learn more about the game, I think, right? Through Hellmuth. Like that was kind of part of the deal.
Yeah, but he knew how to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Phil Hellmuth, who's a championship professional player, Steve Martin,
There's some from the NFL.
me, the owner at the time of the HBT, and then some guy from the Cowboys.
Yeah, and there was also a surgeon there
Right. Yeah, another like non-famous
who
rich
ended up
person.
playing in the Starkey thing.
Yeah.
But so Steve Martin shows up, and I knew that he was going to be there, and I wanted to let's get a hello and a handshake and say, hey, I just directed a version of the play The Underpants. And so he comes and sits down. He's being very meek and quiet.
He's
He
very quiet.
He does not like to talk to people. He's not like an outgoing, oh, the fans are here, I'm going to do stuff with them. He'll do that on stage, but that's not really him. And so I'm walking around the table with the camera in hand. I notice that he's covered in like white hair, like on his jacket, like he rolled in cat fur. And he's playing and he's being very quiet and he's not doing anything. And then when the game ended, I asked Fred, like, hey, can you help me just say hello to him? I feel like weird walking up to him as the camera guy, but you just played with him for like an hour or two. So maybe you could help me say hello. And so Fred goes, yeah, brings me over. Hey, Steve, I wanted to introduce you to my friend Tucker. He just directed the Underpants. And Martin shakes my hand in like the limpiest wristed, not wanting to shake my handshake of all time. And then he just looks at Fred and goes, so your people are going to send my people that the paperwork to sign for the release?
Right.
And then he walked away and that was it.
Right.
And I mean, I didn't feel like I was owed anything, but that was my first time being rebuffed by a celebrity ever.
Well, I don't know that he wasn't trying to be mean or rude
but he has a reputation of just being a dick.
Yeah, he didn't really make much of an effort to be ingratiating either. But I was so just starstruck by even being in Steve Martin's presence. It was amazing.
We also met Vern Troyer on that trip.
Yeah.
We met the original Hulk,
Lou
Ferrigno on that trip. Chamath Palihapitiya was the first time I had met him there. He was one of the initial investors in Facebook. He was the guy that basically made the AOL Instant Messenger that we used.
Oh, wow.
Like that was him. That was his team doing that. And
Yeah,
then I've gotten
he's
to
got
meet him
a
a few
few
other
bucks.
times through
Yeah.
Poker Night. Yeah. But there were a bunch of people at that thing. A lot of
yeah,
Vikings
it was-
players. Adrian Peterson was
Adrian
there.
Peterson, Larry Fitzgerald was there with the Cardinals. I mean, huge NFL stars. And what was kind of funny is none of them could play poker. It was a charity poker event.
Meaning they weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to because of the NFL gambling rules. They weren't allowed to. And I guess no one realized that until the day of.
Yeah.
So all these football players are just kind
Just
of
doing tequila shots, basically.
sitting at the table, letting someone else handle their money or their chips that had no value anyway, but still, yeah, it was weird. But anyway, no, but the Steve Martin was the highlight of that weekend for me, no doubt.
Yeah, meeting that dude. Who would you say is your favorite celebrity that you've met? Just met when they were a celebrity and you were a fan, not through comedy.
Gosh. Well, I met Red Skelton when I was like 16.
Shut the front door.
No, and it's one of those things like when, now, years later, I can appreciate what it was like to meet Red Skelton. When I was 16, it was more of like, oh, I just met a famous guy. It wasn't. Now it's like, holy shit, he was a legend.
Yeah.
He was a total legend. Seinfeld was, even though I was a comic, I was more of a fan, and I was, maybe 5 years in the business. I certainly wasn't anything. Not that I'm anything now, but then I didn't know anything either. Gosh, Steve Martin. That's probably the biggest,
Gotcha.
like just fan to celebrity encounter I've had because he's so huge. That's really I'm gonna drive home after this
And
be
then
like,
think of it.
oh, I forgot this
That's
guy.
what I should have said.
Well, and you probably share a friendship with so many different comedians who people would go like, "Oh my God, so and so, and you've had a chance to talk with blank, and you had a beer with this guy."
Sure, yeah, there's a few,
So-
but yeah, it's hard to recall those right now. Just like who have I had a beer with that other people might think is cool?
I will say Jennifer Tilly is the nicest celebrity I've ever
Jennifer
met.
Tilly's
Jennifer
adorable.
Tilly is the nicest celebrity. She'll take time to stop for any fan that comes up, wants to say hello. She totally gets it. She has no illusions about where her career is right now or anything
Sure.
like that. Just does what she loves to do. And very awesome to the TV crew that we worked on. Just always very, very nice.
She's one of those people that, and I think the world needs more of her, where you're happy to be where you're at and you appreciate everybody around you. There's no, I tell funny jokes, so bow to me kind of an air to these people.
And hopefully you're getting some sweet residual checks too. That Bride of Chucky money's got to come in.
Actually, Chucky has done a lot for her career.
Well, I believe
Yeah,
that
it's
wholeheartedly.
It's been huge. She loves it. She loves being a part of that world.
I love the fact that they enjoyed her so much that they wrote her into the second one playing, or the second sequel to hers playing herself.
We got to do Ankh Care before we do wrap up. today.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the audience will like it, but I love it.
So this is
This is dirty.
it's very dirty, and it's not my road story.
Okay.
But it is one of the most classic road stories out there.
So, kids, if you're dreaming of a life in stand-up comedy,
Oh my gosh.
this is a cautionary tale to not stop your dream, but just know what you're getting into.
See, that's the nightmare I'm living. Like, I have two boys. Tucker knows them, and Cameron, my youngest, he's genuinely a funny kid. Like, here's an example. They're on a cruise with me last summer, and my youngest son says, Dad, can I tell people on the ship that I'm the comedian's son? And I said, well, what if I have a bad show and they hate me? Without missing a beat, he says, I'll tell him I'm the cruise director's son. And when he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, he's got that gift. He's got that sense of timing and whatnot. And people have asked me, would you support your kids going into stand-up comedy? And I honestly, I guess I would, just because I want them to be happy and do what they want to do. But when I chose to be a comic, my parents didn't know the life of what it is to be on the road and grind to the next gig and what happens at some of these gigs. I know the life. So if my child were to do that, I'd be like a million times more scared than my parents were of me, because they just didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know. I know. And here's an example of that. This is one of the most classic road stories ever. And again, it's not mine. It's just one of those road stories that has been around so long it's legendary. But I think it goes back to the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. There's a comedy show happening in this bar, a one-nighter. And after the show, there's a live band. And the band and the comics all stayed in the same house, a quote-unquote comedy condo. Well, as bands tend to do, they meet girls after their set. So the downstairs is living quarters. Upstairs is all kind of like a barracks-style beddings, just bed after bed after bed, open room. The drummer meets this girl, and he's banging her in this wide open space with his bandmates and the comics all trying to sleep around him. And he's banging this girl, and the story goes, you hear the guy say, oh, this is awesome, this is great, this is awesome, you're the best, can I come inside of you? And there's just enough of a pregnant pause, and then you hear the girl go, I don't care. And apparently, like, the bandmates and the comics around just fell out of their cots laughing so bad. Like, I don't care. Like, you're the fifth one tonight. What do I give a shit? And these guys were laughing so hard. As the story goes, like, the drummer lost his will. The girl was pissed, and it just ended badly for those two. But one of the best road stories ever.
Oh, that's good stuff. You just have to imagine sort of like the belt that she has at home that she puts little notches on.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the name of all the bands, and
that's who knows what that woman's doing today.
So do you think about that when you walk into a room and you're sizing up the crowd and you go like, oh, this is definitely an I don't care crowd?
I have.
Try this one.
I have, yeah, no doubt.
All right, well, hey gang, we've kept you for much longer than we intended.
What time
Fred
is it?
Bevill, it's
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I know, we almost 2 hours, and so this has been easily one of my favorites.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, we gotta get
thanks
you
for
back.
inviting me down.
Because let's face it, we haven't scratched the surface of what we could really dig into with good old Fred Bevill over here.
Yeah, we could talk more comedy or whatever. Sure.
Well, where do people find you?
I have a website now.
Whoa!
Look at that.
He does.
It's
Welcome to 1998.
Thank you. I'm a little late.
It's geocities.com/ND2/biz2/Fred Bevill Goku Fan 69.
He's not too far off. No, it's just fredbevill.com.
Yeah.
BEVILL Fred.com.
And you book out for corporate events and not just performing at the banquets, but you also do some speaking and things like that.
I do a lot of corporate events, do a lot of USO stuff. And I spend probably 30% of my time on cruise ships, working for Norwegian, Holland America, Oceania.
Those are good ones.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of a room do they put you in? Like, are you in like a tiny little thing? Or
It depends on what line I'm wearing. Like Norwegian, you board as crew, but you get an officer's cabin.
Okay.
So it's just you, and it's a little bit bigger than the standard cabin because most people will live in that cabin for months at a time. On a lot of the other lines, you board as a guest, and you're in a guest room. So your room is identical to everybody else's. Rarely will I get like a balcony or anything like that, but usually I'll have at least a porthole, you know, to look outside.
But you get access to all the you're when you're not performing, you're just like a passenger, right?
Just like a passenger, yeah. And it's a pretty sweet gig. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I can do anything the passengers do. The only rules I have, and these rules are actually like good rules for me. Like I'm not allowed to gamble in the casino. Or play bingo or do anything I can win, quote unquote win. I'm not allowed to do, which is fine. And I'm not allowed to be in public areas after 2 a.m., which again, totally fine. I'm usually in my cabin by
why is
midnight
that rule
anyway.
there?
I think just because.
Do you think you turn into something at 2?
I think, you know, didn't your mother or dad always tell you like nothing good happens after 2 a.m.? Like.
They said 10 p.m. So
like you should just probably be wherever you're going to be when
Right.
it's around 2 a.m.
Sure.
You know,
Bar closed.
I guess it's more of a liability thing. You know, you're not supposed to fraternize with passengers and all that, but
oh.
how are you not like 900 pounds? Because all I do on cruise ships is eat.
Yeah, right. There's
Yeah, your career's been cruise ships and casinos for like the past 10 plus years.
So I haven't been hungry. No, it's a sweet gig, but yeah, when I'm not working, I'm just a passenger. And different lines has different things. Like Norwegian works you like a rented mule. I mean, you'll do a little variety 10-minute set. They call it the Welcome Aboard show. It's just kind of a little appetizer of the live entertainment on the ship that week. Then you'll have your main night, which is a 45-minute family-friendly set. And then I'll do an adult late night, which is another 45-minute, not so family-friendly, but not too dirty either. So, you know, you have to board with, you know, 2 45-minute shows and a 10 to 15-minute variety set. Then you work like a Hall in America. It's just a show and a variety set. So it's like super easy, comparatively speaking.
Gotcha.
So I have to board a ship with like 2 hours of material.
Jeepers.
That can be, and half of it has to be like family friendly.
Ay. Well, I mean, good for you. That's a great niche to work, and the checks keep clearing. So why the heck not, right?
Why the heck not?
Hopefully this podcast will help your career take off. And
Yeah. Obviously, this is the missing link. Obviously,
nothing made sense until I was on JJ Meets World.
suddenly the phone never stopped ringing.
That's right. Yeah, it's all bill collectors.
Right.
We're
they
big
know where
amongst
you're
guys
at now.
named Troy. So
Are
if you know
you?
anyone named Troy.
Troy.
All right. I'll keep an eye out.
All right, now this time it's really thank you for coming on.
All right.
We're ready to be done. And no other little questions you want to ask, Tucker?
No.
No. Okay, fantastic. Hey, Fred, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
JJ Meets World.
Whoo-wee! That's going to wrap it up for today's show. For more info, including how you can help us keep the lights on by donating to our Patreon, which we definitely appreciate, visit our website, jjmeetsworld.com, or you can hit us up on social media. If you're tweeting, if you're Facebooking, if you're Instagramming, if you're MySpacing. Do we have a MySpace page?
We did back in 1998.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's all the sites that people are actually using these days. And if you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, really wherever you consume podcasts. And we'd also appreciate if you would share this on your social media, and if you would rate us on iTunes or give us a thumbs up on Google Play. I don't know how all of these things work, but Tucker tells me it's really important, especially for building our Lebanese audience. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out moonbasemaria.com. You can see JJ at any of the Linebenders shows or find him at linebenders.com, which he recently repurchased for 5 years. And this was a long episode, and we talked about some really funny stuff out there. And this is my plea to you guys. See some local comedy. Just go out there, check out an open mic. They're happening all the time. See a comedy show, whether it's an improv troupe or sketch. You're going to enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, well, then I hope that you can find something that you enjoy in your cubicle